Welcome to the U-Turn Podcast. This is the place to connect to who you truly are. We're bringing PhDs, experts, and leaders to help you elevate your mindset in your work life and in your love life so that you can see things differently and truly love your world. I'm Ashley Stahl. I'm a career expert, author, and TEDx speechwriter and booker, and I'm excited to bring you in to this week's episode. U-Turn friends, it's Ashley Stahl here, and obviously we know that I bring very special friends onto the show, and today is no exception. Heather Monahan is a best-selling author, top 50 keynote speaker, TEDx speaker, podcast host. I mean, she's everywhere, and she was a former C-suite executive in media, and she's actually named one of the most influential women in radio in 2017. I could literally go on the magic that she's creating. She launched her show. She has a podcast called Creating Confidence, and she's been nice enough to have me on. It's a top 25 show on Apple Podcasts, and you see it ranking in the business chart weekly. And it's for good reason. Like, how do we pursue anything without working on our confidence? And she's so good at that. And she's also referred me some clients for my TEDx offer. And I have got to tell you, and I've never actually told you this, Heather, that sometimes clients of yours will reflect back some of the learnings they have from you. And there's so many areas in their confidence they didn't even know they had a little bit of a confidence gap. They thought that it was just, oh, the situation is this way. And you have been the one that points out to them, no, this is a confidence issue that you're having. So I'm so excited for all of you today to hear about her speaking tips and how you can really build yourself out as a professional speaker. She has a mastermind that is incredibly powerful, and it's enrolling now. So if you're listening to this, don't waste a second. Get in touch with her. We'll provide you all that info in the show notes. I'll ask her about it here. I don't know of any mastermind that I would trust outside of this one to elevate your speaking career. So if you're serious, this is the place to go. Heather, thank you so much for coming on.
I'm excited to be here with you. So excited.
I'm so excited to actually get to know this side of your brain because all I see is badass speakers coming out of your mastermind and doing TED Talks with me sometimes. And I'm like, wow, what is she doing with you? It's something good.
You know what, Ashley, thanks for bringing that up. One of the things, I just ended my first annual mastermind. And at the end, the closing, you do in-person events in Miami with my speaker coach who helped me for my TEDx, right? And what I guess the most eye-opening revelation for me at the end of spending 1 year with these people is my attendees left marriages, left jobs, landed some big stages, of course, but more importantly, like they reinvented themselves and their life. And I never anticipated or expected that, but it was such a cool byproduct of being around a team of like-minded people that all want to go to the next level, all have a message, want to do good in the world. One person wrote a book, one person lost a podcast, right? Like all different tactical and really big moves in their life. But I guess the biggest takeaway for me was they up-leveled their life in massive ways. You know, one woman got really healthy and she had not been taking care of her health. Many of them went to you to land TEDx talks and just for really game-changing events in their life. And it was so incredible to be a part of it. So that's why I'm so excited to be doing it again.
Okay, so I think we live in a world right now where, you know, my business has been built in personal brand land where, you know, Facebook ads really started in like 2014, 15. People were making landing pages, opt-ins, coaching businesses. And there's so many people who probably never even thought that they would be a speaker or want to be a speaker. And they want to. And I feel like the speaking, I mean, TEDx is a very opaque institution, and I'm proudly not affiliated with them because then I can go the entrepreneur route and do things that are outside of their limits. How do people start to think about building their speaking career? What are some of those first steps? And what do they need to know about creating lead generation? Like, how do they even get people to invite them to speak?
Okay, so great point. First of all, for anyone listening, everyone needs to speak at some point in time. Whether you're going to be speaking up in a PTA meeting, whether you're speaking up in a meeting at work, right? You want to find a way, and this is why I think everyone needs to be a student and study how to be a stronger speaker, to get your point across, to get essentially get your way, whatever it is that you want to get done, right? And the more confident and comfortable you become in speaking, the more readily you can add value, the more readily you can, give your opinion and really bring forth your thoughts and ideas to any situation. So I think it's really important for everyone to be a student of speaking. For me, what I would suggest to people is start small, right? I mean, I know I used to run a sales team. So I'd stand up in front of my sales organization and speak, right? And it was like once a week I was doing that. The more that you put those reps in, like anything, the more practice that you get, the better you get. Then you start taking bigger stages, right? So I really go to this idea of baby steps, right? So for me, it was running sales meetings at first. Then I started, speaking at sales conferences, right? And those are bigger stages. Then just most recently, I spoke at the LEAP conference in Saudi Arabia in front of 280,000 people. And people are like, how did you, right? It all stems from these baby steps and really recording and keeping top of mind for yourself. Okay, I remember I did this, check that one off. Okay, I was afraid going into my TEDx talk, nailed it. Like you start reminding yourself of all the little wins that you've had along the way. And those little wins give you momentum to take that next bigger stage. And I always make it about the audience, not about myself, right? And I challenge everyone to do this. I always say, if you can help one person out there, if you can make a difference in one person's life, it's worth it, right? So when you stop making it about yourself, get out of your own head, there's a fine line between fear and excitement. You can start looking at it as, I'm excited to go out there and share this message that might be able to transform someone's life or might be able to impact somebody differently. And so often, actually, people will say, oh, my message is just like everybody else's. No one needs to hear my message. I'm calling BS on that, because everybody operates at a different frequency, a different story, a different background. And when I might be, talking about confidence to someone, it might not land right with them. They're not going to hear me. They're not going to resonate. But you actually could get up and tell that same story from your vantage point, and they are going to hear you, right? So it's so important that, listen, there hasn't been an original work since the Bible, right? So we're all reinventing things and reimagining things through the lens of our own lives. Just know this, your story and your message is worthy, and it will impact and help people and land with people in a different, important way. It's worth sharing.
This is so good. Okay. So I feel like the biggest thing that, new business owners will ask and new speakers are going to ask is just about money. Like they feel like, how do I even go from being the free speaker? Should I not be the free speaker? Like I know for me personally, I spoke for free for 5 years, Heather, and I would talk to any audience that would listen, which is so funny because I remember when I was writing my book, I had writer's block and my mom was like, oh, that's funny. You don't have talking block. So there's just an era where I just would talk and talk and talk. And I also learned that there's a huge art to like really doing it right? There's a lot of people who show up and they just talk and channel, and there's brilliance in that. But to get yourself really far, there's a lot more practice and intention that probably goes into it. When you think about somebody who's starting out, could you actually give people listening a bit of a timeline of here's how many talks, or if you were just trying to structure your approach, that you might want to do the free speaker stuff? And then also, what are the assets and materials they need to have on hand to be taken seriously as a speaker and to start to really monetize it? So kind of two questions.
Everyone has a different timeline, and I've seen it happen so different. I have a friend of mine who got into speaking and literally became booked out for 2 years overnight. That is not the norm, but it can happen, right? Like he got the right agent, the team bought into him, and they booked this guy out for 2 years, right? He's killing it, making it fortune, literally millions of dollars a year. So it can happen for anyone, right? There's many different ways to become successful as a speaker. I have a friend whose TEDx was viral, right? Like yours, right? So some people, there's very different ways that you can, there's not just it's not a cookie cutter approach, right? And so I think that's exciting to know that, because there's so many different opportunities for people to find success in speaking. But I agree with you. I started in corporate America. They did not pay speakers in my arena, in the media business. Everyone spoke for free. I didn't even know speaking was a business, much less, multi-billion-dollar business. I had no idea. So I just thought people spoke for free, and that was the way it was. When I ended up getting fired, I remember I wanted to sell books. So I Googled, how do you sell books? And it said speak. And I'm like, oh, great. I speak all day long. So I started cold calling companies saying, hey, I'd love to come in and give your team a talk around confidence as long as you buy X amount of books. And anyhow, that took me, so I was speaking for free, to sell my book. And what you're doing when you are speaking for free is you're developing a roster testimonials of your speaking business. You're getting videos of people saying how great you are. You're getting footage of you for social media, for your website, right? So all of these things are, you don't have to start speaking for free. That's something that I did, something that you did. Other people might not want to do that. I mean, it's really a personal choice, but to me, to get the testimonials, to get the footage, to get the reviews, to get the recommendations, I think it's worthwhile. And to your point of assets, you want to have a speaker one page. You want to have a speaker kit that's going to include testimonials and the topics and takeaways people are going to get from your tracks, as well as the places and the brands you spoke for.
Right. Okay. I also think people don't think a lot about how much other people are in the audience watching them. Like 280,000 people in Dubai. I mean, that's pretty next level. But if you do yourself right, you're going to get more talks from that. It's just an engine that feeds itself. I know that, even like with startups, right? Like getting to your first million, like my agency, Wise Whisper Agency, we hit our first million in 9 months. And that was like a grind, right? Everything is, I am everybody, right? Like I am everybody. I am the creative director. I am the finance person. I am doing business development. I'm writing the talks. I'm doing operations and sending invoices. Like it's everything, right? And then after that, up into, after being $1 million a year, going to a $2 million a year company, you delegate things, right? Now I have a creative director. Now I have an ops director. Now I have a marketing director. Every step of the journey is so different when you're trying to monetize anything. And I know for some people in their speaking career, it's going to be different levels. So I know a lot of people wonder about agents. A lot of people wonder about getting booked more. What is your ethos around getting an agent, when you're ready for an agent, representation, anything like that?
I'm a big fan of go big or go home. So as soon as I started speaking, I wanted an agent, right? And so it's all about how you position and present yourself. So I went to the largest US speaker bureau, Harry Walker Speaker Agency. And I'm like, I'm going right to the top. I'll go to the CEO and just start pitching myself, right? So I learned a lot going through that process. I ended up landing Harry Walker Speaker Agency, and they have booked me for speeches. But what I did was I took a screenshot of them putting my face on their talent board, and then I sent it to all the other bureaus. And I was like, hey, I don't know if you know, but I'm Harry Walker's repping me, wanted to make sure that you knew I was available as well. So I was able to pick up 10 other speaker agencies out of that, right? And then it really starts building on itself. And then the more that it really comes down to relationships. The best agents are the ones that actually know you, like you, and trust you, right? That's it. And so once you form some of those relationships, those are the people that are going to start booking you and start placing you, right? But that doesn't happen overnight always. Definitely didn't happen overnight for me. So one of the routes that I went was I brought on a manager who I pay her commission on everything that I do. And she manages my speaking business for me. She's knee deep in this world. And she's, just a phenomenal person that is always out advocating for me. And she works a lot of the liaisons between the different agencies and bureaus, because there are so many that, to your point, it's just too hard for one person to manage.
Yeah, it's so true. Okay. Let's talk about writing a keynote. Like how I feel like keynotes on the market for many different prices and many different sizes, right? So sometimes people will get a call and it's 30-minute keynote and a fireside chat, 45-minute. What is like a standard keynote that you think if somebody's taking this seriously, they really need to have at least this size of a talk? And how do they even start structuring that?
First of all, the easiest talks are the longest ones, right? The hardest ones. I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said, if you need me to speak for an hour, you can put me on now. If you need me to speak for 30 minutes, I need 2 weeks. If you need me to speak for 15, I need a month, right? Yeah. So it's much harder to, and why you're so great at what you do, because it's very hard to come up with a 12-minute talk, right? Because you need to cut every expendable word possible and bring the meat and the power in a really tight window. That's very challenging. So I don't recommend people to start small. You want to at least have a 45-minute keynote. The majority of the speeches that I get are 45-minute keynote plus a 15-minute Q&A. Most companies are hiring for that right now. However, there's also 60-minute keynote. So I would advise people to have a 45-minute talk as well as a 60-minute talk. And it sounds so challenging. It really isn't. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is to think about the audience as the hero, right? The audience is the hero of your story. And the more that you can not make it about you, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see with new speakers is they make it all about them, their story. Instead, make it about the audience, showcasing them as the hero, and then think of what does that trajectory look like and where are you taking them from? What does that transformation look like throughout that keynote?
Okay. And I also think points of contact. Okay, so you're saying 45 minutes. A lot of companies have one sort of point of contact that are looking to fill these speaker roles. And then, events like conferences have another type of contact. Have you trained your speakers in your mastermind to do outreach to get speaking engagements? And how does that look? Like, what materials do they need and who do they reach out to create more opportunity?
This is all sales 101, right?
Yeah.
So it's so funny. People are always like, oh, I'm not in sales. Listen, if you're a speaker, you're in sales. You got to be out there selling yourself all the time. One of the things that I suggest people do, and it's never too early to start this, I take out Google Alert on anything that's meaningful to me, right? Like if it's women's events that you want to be speaking at, you want to start building that roster of events. They're all coming once a year, right? And plenty of them are virtual, plenty of them are in person. You want to have this roster and Excel spreadsheet of all these upcoming events. Another way you can do that is through the association. There's tremendous amount of association events. They typically have a higher price point to pay speakers as well. So those are great clients to go after. Another thing that I suggest people do is identify 10 competitors that you see as in a similar arena or delivering similar keynotes to you and go on to their testimonial page. And there's a lead list right there for you of every person that hired them in the last year. And you can start reaching out to them and talking about how you're complementary or additive. And, for me, Sarah Blakely is one of my competitors. So I would go to her page, look at who she's spoken for over the last year, and then reach out to those people and say, oftentimes companies bring me in right after Sarah speaks. Here's why. Here's how I'm able to add value in a different and meaningful way.
Okay. So this is really useful. I feel like Sales 101, a lot of people don't realize that that is the cost to admission of having a career they really want is like business development. And it does improve and the engine starts to feed itself, but you kind of have to be game. If somebody's like really hitting the pavement, they're really passionate about being a speaker and they're willing to do cold outreach and keep pitching themselves as a speaker. How long would you say as a rule of thumb, people should expect that? Because I would imagine that could be a couple, 2 to 3 years of like consistent outreach until you get real traction. And I think a lot of people, I learned this from job hunting and having job hunting courses, like clients who would email me and say, hey, I'm not getting any emails back. My first thing I would respond is, how many emails have you sent? And it's if I've heard anything below the number 200, I'm like, you haven't sent enough, and most of the time they'll be like 12. And I'm like, yeah, keep going.
Well, the other thing is not just to send an email, right? So one of the beautiful things about the world we live in now is there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Instagram. There's so many different ways to be able to show up and interface with someone. There's a circle of friends that you have in common. Always tap somebody that knows somebody, right? That's the easiest and best way to get in with someone is
Right.
through a warm contact, right? So don't just be singular faceted. Look at the multifaceted and say, what different points can I reach out to this person and show up on this person's radar? And that goes back to creating content as well, right? So the more that you're creating content of showcasing you speaking, the more you're going to be top of mind for these people. And then when you send a DM to them on LinkedIn where they're consuming your content, being that you've got a great message that, if you're following the hashtag keynote speaker and you start, in the DMs and in the comment kind of conversations with people, you start developing rapport.
So it's business in that sense too. You got to develop relationships and rapport. What about like the repetitive nature of relationships? One thing that I always kind of think about for speakers is, okay, some event managers have repeat events, or there's organizations and they have 20 chapters and you can book a spot in all of those. From a strategy standpoint, if you're doing sales and you're trying to make the most out of your outreach, how can, I imagine these are some things that would be good to think about. I'm a member of EO. EO has a bajillion chapters, Is there any sort of thinking like that people can get into for their cold outreach to just optimize?
The most important thing before you start doing that, firstly, you need to understand like what is the message you're bringing forward and what audience do you serve? That's the most important thing first, right? Because once we know who that audience is that you serve, then we can back into and reverse engineering to, okay, what are those targets look like? You brought up a good point. Your time can be better spent working at obtaining a contact at a business, at an event, whatever, where there's going to be multiple opportunities. So for me, that was Verizon, right? This is just an example to your point. I got hired by Verizon. Once I formed a relationship with the woman that hired me, she started passing me around to all of the different facets within. Verizon was a massive organization, massive budget, right? But she was able to, point me in 50 different directions, all under the umbrella of Verizon, where they already know impressed me because I'd already spoken for them. Then you start getting passed around the actual company. So yes, it's definitely more effective. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your message is landing and serving that marketplace. Another example of this is the MLM business. I started getting booked a lot for MLMs. So as I saw, wow, I really serve this audience. There's something here. I started following the hashtag MLM. I started Googling what MLMs are out there. I looked at my competitors and find out what other MLMs there. It becomes much easier once you understand the audience you can serve, who you're really delivering, and then you can get really targeted and focus on, what are those brands and those companies that you be going after.
Okay. I love that. There's so much strategy there. I feel like you probably have a lot of people who come into your mastermind and I would even love to know, like, where are people at when they come into your mastermind? And because I imagine you see some people who have done some speaking and maybe there's some people who've never done that much speaking, but they really want to build their career. So can you take us a little bit through what is the journey of your mastermind? What are you helping people with throughout and where do they start from? I imagine there's many different places.
Yeah, many. And so I go back to what I didn't realize. It's really about people that want to up-level their life. But that's the bottom line, right? Because I've seen so much change on the team that I had in the last year, where they started. We define what our goals are, our targets are, and then watching what they deliver on is incredible. And to your point, some of the people in my mastermind last year had never spoken before publicly, ever. And then some of them had been speaking at a very high level. However, one of my speakers that had been speaking at a very high level was actually a gentleman you happen to know. When he started with us, he was very cold and very monotone. And throughout the year, his biggest transformation, in my opinion, was watching him become animated, watching him step into his personality. That was his big transition, as well as now writing a book, giving a TEDx talk. He launched a podcast, he launched a personal brand. Like, he did so much in the last year that he up-leveled his life in an incredible way, got into the Zoom business. Like, it's wild what I've seen happen with these people. But again, it all goes back to it. People that really want to take their life to that next level and start doing something differently to make more of an impact.
Okay. I feel like when I look at the speaking industry, sometimes it feels like there's the successful speakers and the not so successful speakers. It feels like there's a huge gap. I have some friends where they're booking like 200 stages a year and they're paid like $50K a keynote, and I think a lot of people listening, they don't even realize how much you can get paid as a speaker. I also know that the people who are successful at it, they're probably selling the same keynote or two. Can you talk a little bit about what do you need in your repertoire in order to scale as a speaker? So obviously there's the cold outreach and hitting the pavement and knowing your ideal clients that you can target those organizations that perhaps have multiple chapters. But yeah, like what materials and assets do you even need in your pocket to really be able to play big?
Yeah, so you want to have a speaker one sheet, right? And anyone can go on my website, heathermonahan.com, and see all of these materials. But it's just a very simple one sheet that's showcasing a short bio on you, a headshot, a couple of testimonials of your speaking, as well as the keynotes that you speak to. Very, very simple. You want to keep it simple, keep it light. Then there's a speaker kit, which is going to build out a lot more detail around what your deliverables are, what people will walk away from each one of your different keynotes. And you need to have some type of a reel. Giving a TEDx talk is so powerful because you can oftentimes just shoot the TEDx out there as your reel and you don't really need to have much else. But if you don't have a TEDx talk yet, you haven't worked, then what you need to do is you need to have clips that are essentially sewn together in addition to testimonials, in addition to the deliverables, within this video. That's going to be somewhere from 8 to 10 minutes. And you're also going to want to have a short one of 2 to 3 minutes, depending on what somebody is looking for. But they will want to see footage of you before there's really any conversation or moving anything forward.
That's so good. Okay. What have I not asked you about building a speaking career that you think is really important for people to understand if they're just getting started right now, or maybe they just have a couple speeches under their belt?
I think the most important thing is that everybody has a message and your message needs to be heard. So often I speak to people and they're like, no, I'm just not cut out for this. I have something on my heart, but I don't. Anyone can do it. It's just learning a new, everyone starts out as a beginner at some point in time. You're going to have to show up as a beginner. You're going to have to step into that fear, and doing it in a collective with a team of people that support you and encouraging you to go that next level. It makes so much more fun, and you build momentum so much faster. Don't go it alone. You don't need to do this alone. It's so much more fun when you do it as a part of a team. because it holds you accountable each week to say, oh my gosh, I can push myself a little bit further because I know everybody else on the team can be pushing themselves further too.
Beautiful. Okay, tell us, where do they go to find out about your mastermind?
I will include the link in your show notes below, but the Heather Monahan Elite Mastermind, you can fill out an application there and jump on a short call with my team and find out if you are the right fit. But would love to anyone that has a message on their heart that thinks that they've got, something to say. I want to get you on the phone with my team and find out if it's probably going to be the right fit for you. If you are not the person that wants to do something good, that wants to be part of a great team, come on and fill out the application.
This was so good. I hope that this inspires someone who's maybe sitting on a message and they haven't given themselves a permission slip to go pursue it. There are groups of people who are striving for the same thing as you in their own way. And it sounds like they'll be learning not just the business of speaking, but their message and what they can bring into it. So that's so good. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Ashley, for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the U-Turn podcast. And thank you again so much for our sponsors. We are here because of you. And to our listeners, thank you for checking out our sponsors. We always pick people and brands that we trust and we believe in. And just for listening to the show, writing your reviews on the Apple app, and just being willing to make your own U-turns. We'll see you next week.